Sorry.
All right, welcome,
That's
folks.
terrible.
I'm Erik Core with Punk Globe, and I'm here with Jesse Velo from the band Los Illegals, LA's kind of original Chicano punk rock band,
Yep.
and really just I we met recently and really enjoyed that. But when I heard your music, and I think it was recorded about almost 30 years ago, the LA song is
Yes.
it felt like it was could have come out today because it felt as relevant. If and even like even the music, the way it was framed, everything was just like so here, so present, so now, and it really hit me. So anyway, I just super excited to be here today, and um, would love for you to just kind of give people a sense of like how you all came together and what brought you together and what brought you to punk rock.
Well, first of all, it's important to let people know that you and I were walking the streets of the riot zone over there in LA, and it's just gone really crazy. Absolutely crazy. The military, the kids are running through the park and they're pulling people off the street. You can find it all over the net. And how LA became relevant again, is beyond me. First of all, I'm glad that you appreciate that because it was quite a thing to bring out to people when it first came out. What we did was we were trying to find some way of, we're Mexican and we're American and whatever else we are, and California culture. And we wanted to sort of display that because it was in the 70s that people weren't sort of saying that kind of stuff. And we needed to find some kind of music that we could generate our own sound that would be American, Mexican, and essentially Chicano. So that's why you find heavy guitars, acoustic guitars, feedback, timbales. This is before anybody did that, and some political overtones. And that's what we did. And we really liked it. And it opened up a lot of ears and eyes.
Yeah, no, I love like there's elements of the music that the first listen was this is a great song. The second listen was getting into the politics of it for me, like going deeper into because the first to listen to me is always with the heart. It's just the emotional first pass. But then as I went deeper into it, there's so many layers of just the musicality and some of the creativity and what you all brought together in that space.
I think one of the coolest things we were told was you guys are like Tito Puente on LSD. And when I finally got to meet Tito Puente, I didn't tell him jack shit. I
That's
don't
so
know if you
funny
liked
because
it.
people used to call me Bob Dylan on LSD.
You're not.
They used to call me Bob Dylan on LSD.
They're absolutely right. So the group came together because there was it wasn't a really hard what do you call it where you're stuck in one side of the town and not the other. It's not like the Deep South or even parts of the Midwest. But musically, our groups had not been able to cross what's known as the Sixth Street Bridge into downtown in Hollywood, and we played on what was known as the Burrito Circuit. The burrito circuit is the Latino American version of the Chitlin circuit that Jimi Hendrix and all them and Ike and Tina Turner did all down the South. But it was just basically great musicians wasting their lives doing cover songs that they changed around.
Okay.
And we didn't want, I was going to die on the burrito circuit. Are you kidding? So we just got together one at a time. We would find somebody. The main guy in the group is Willie Heron or Heron, and you need to know this. The background of most Chicanos are that we are of mixed race. My last name is Velo, and that's an Italian name. My first name is Jesus. You can call me Jesse or Chewy. Willie Heron is he calls himself Heron, and we have all this mixture and all this culture, specifically coming from California. The California history is that we ran together nicely. And when we were talking, and I met Willie through his art, he did some great murals that were wonderful, extremely art. They weren't all violent or anything, but some of them had honorary things in there. So we picked up a couple of people and we would just go and find bands and steal them and tell them, we're going to promise you this, that, and the other. And then we would sort of see if they were into the politics that we thought we were going to do before we even wrote a song. And they were pretty matched up pretty well. And so we started writing songs. We were an offshoot of a group called OSCO, ASCO. They're really huge now. There was a red carpet thing on them the other day at the Grauman's Chinese Theater. And it's okay, if you look them up or somebody else looks them up, they'll love what they find there. And so as part of OSCO, they would have little projects, and Los Illegals was a side project. We sat down, we discussed what we wanted to do. let's get this name together. Let's use a bilingual statement on it. Los in Spanish, illegals in English, to throw everybody off. And it absolutely worked. It pisses off Mexico whenever we'd go down there. Why don't you call it ilegales? Like, because we're Americans, damn it. That whole thing on both sides. And the famous story, of course, Eric, about being stoned on both sides of the border for
Yeah.
being too Chicano. That's my favorite story. Dangerous, but it's my favorite. And we run around doing that. We ran into some people actually from the CYO, the Catholic Youth Organization.
Hmm.
It's a building that the Catholic used to do back in the 40s and 50s to have people come and do dances and socials there. And one of the new nuns that was there let Willie have a space to do his murals and artwork and let us rehearse there. And we started working there. And her name was Sister Karen Bacalero. She was one of the uh, theological liberation theology type nuns. They were
Okay.
very radical.
Yeah.
They smoked and they drank wine and they argued dialectical materialism with you in English and Spanglish. Love that woman. She was such a radical. She says, "Well, have you gone to the whiskey?" Nobody goes to the whiskey. You have to have a major record deal. Have you gone to the Roxy? No, nobody goes to the Roxy. Led Zeppelin plays the Roxy in their off nights. And she says, "Well, you could make a club up here." And I'm thinking, nobody's going to come to East LA and play in a club over here. They're going to get shot. She goes, "If you do it right, if you invite artists, they will come." And so we started this thing. And she said, "And besides, I have a liquor license." So there's this nun smiling, smoking a cigarette with some art behind her that she says she's going to do a gallery on, which I thought was crazy. And she's absolutely right. So a band called the Fender Buddies, who were from New York, part of the art scene through Willie Head-On, signed up. Then we found a couple of other groups, and we started a club called Club Vex, VEX. And it was amazing how many people showed up from the West Side and Hollywood to fill the place up as we went along. And it was wonderful. The whole idea was, let's see if we could invite the people from the West and East Side to come to our house to play and see that their cars aren't going to get broken into. They're not going to get stabbed. They're not going to get shot. They're not going to get robbed, or nobody's going to break anything there. And it worked. And you know how long it worked? It worked until the South Bay, mainly middle class, angry white kids from bands like Black Flag and all those other stupid bands came in and they destroyed it. Broke
Yeah.
the copy machines, tore up the art, threw chairs through the windows. This happened on our watch because we were out touring. Anyway, that's a story of the Vex. The Vex philosophy was all together. There's a couple of articles about how united it was in terms of race, gender, and everything else in between. It was a wonderful thing. And so we were very happy with that until the record industry came around. Okay, well, should we do a record? I don't know. Should we? What's going to happen? We're going to have to go on tour. And this is pre MTV. So everybody in California looks cool, but you don't look like that in Montana, and you certainly don't look like that in Texas. Texas, that's another place I'm very proud. We wound up touring Texas first. And you know about Texas. Our favorite theme was to say, Texas, where they treat white folks like wetbacks. It's really bad. And I have those kind of stories for you if you have the time to do that. But it
I
generated that.
remember
We
you being
signed up,
told me about getting pulled over that one time.
by the immigration people.
Yeah.
That was my favorite. And then the cops on a just like right out of some stupid song by the Eagles, on a lonely desert stretch of highway. Cool wind in my hair. They pulled us over, but we were smart. We had white roadies, and they were very good at discussion. And the problem with us is we just did this gig, and we were still wearing our makeup, little mascara and stuff like that, with our skinny pants and our red pants with a crack sticking out on our butts. When they pulled us over, they didn't know what to do with us. They were so shocked. And so they called a sergeant. That's how bad it was. They didn't know, were we going to take these guys in or not? So I started thinking, oh my God, it's Mississippi in 1964. Like Schwimmer, Cheney, and Goodwin, we're going to get killed over there. Didn't happen. The big guy came, Mr. Big of the lieutenant or the captain of the police force came by, and he's coming, what you guys got? See you guys. What are you doing here? We're a rock and roll band here. Rock and roll, huh? Then he asked us the question I thought was for sure going to put us in jail. What's the name of your band? It took us a long time to say Los Illegals, and we all said it at the same time. Stalled a couple of seconds later. He goes, "What? Los Illegals?" And you know what he did? Shockingly, 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 shockingly. He turned around and told his crew, "Let's get these guys the fuck out of here. You guys get out of here. We're done. Go back to your jobs." And we drove off, and our pants were still wet. I saw death that night. That's my story.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. Hey, let's go back to Club Vex for a minute because you
Sure.
told me a lot about that and just like what were some of the bands that you were collaborating with there and like because it sounds like such a rich scene that you all put together and
Surprisingly, they started coming out. You get Charlotte Coffey's band, the Go-Go's coming out, and of course X. X was like they were the best. They come to hang out. What these bands started doing was they started saying, we're doing the whiskeys. Why don't you open for us? And it's like, us? You? Yes. So they brought some stuff over, and some people would occasionally sneak in under because they're famous. Somebody from Bauhaus comes in, they're in town. He hears about it and sneaks in, watches the show. Next thing you know, we're getting a call. Bauhaus wants to know if you could do 2 nights at the Roxy's, 2 sets each night. How could we resist that? We
oh
couldn't.
wow.
And I don't know who else was there, but there was a whole bunch of bands there. And then what happened is it started a friendship between East and West. And to this day, I'm still talking to people. In fact, I have my list here. I'm ready for you. I want to talk about, of course, Ginger Coyote.
Yeah.
She was, I mean, before anybody came across the bridge, she was talking about us and her friends. Gary Leonard, crazy wild haired Jewish guy, comes with his camera and starts shooting stuff at the first Vex. And we had people from New York there. And Pleasant Gaiman, who wrote a great couple of books and articles there for the Times and for her own magazine. And of course, Iris Berry, who runs this place,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh, you're working
Hostage
with
Press.
Hostage? Yeah, awesome.
They made when you get this hip crowd there, then they all started following them. Now we're all friends, and it's utopia in the air
Yeah.
until the middle class fucked it up. Excuse my language. Can I cuss in here?
Oh, Ginger would be upset if you didn't.
I love
In fact,
Ginger.
it can she'd be fucking pissed if you didn't. How's that?
Thank you, Ginger. Yeah, so a lot of these bands would sort of come on their own or undercover or whatever like that. There are a lot of actors too. My favorite closed down the club. Everything's done. We swept it all up, and we put the money, which we would donate the proceeds after cost to the church, so they could build stuff. We would pay the bands. Then after that, we didn't keep the profit. We gave it to the church so they could like fix the bathroom, get new photocopy machines and stuff like that. And there was a man drinking at the bar in the corner upstairs, and he's kind of quiet. And I look and I go, "Oh my God, it's that guy from Wolfen." There's a movie called Wolfen with Edward James Olmos in it.
I remember that vaguely from a long time
Right.
ago.
So it was Edward James Olmos. From that, he got a star rise. And he's talking. I go, "Wait, what are you doing here so late?" He goes, "Oh, I'm going to go ready to go to work." Go to work? What kind of work is that? He goes, "Oh, I'm still acting." "Oh, I'm sorry, I missed your last whatever. I felt so bad." He goes, "But this is a crazy project I'm on. The director's a British man, and he's mad at everybody, and everybody's about to revolt, and he's nuts. I tell you, but I'm going to stick with it because it's going to be something." It turns out that he was waiting because the shoot is very late at night up to the morning. The movie was Blade Runner.
Oh, wow.
He plays Gaff, who takes off in the sun's coming up. That takes off. That brings him to the police
Yeah.
captain. In fact, he takes him to the same station that you and I were in. We're
I was
walking
gonna
in,
say Union Station. I mean, we talked about that the day we met. Yeah.
and then we would get just the Sisters of the Mary. The Catholic Church would come. Sisters of the Maryknoll. They got themselves really killed in El Salvador.
Hmm.
People like that would show up. Politicians and things like that. Especially that. But when we started moving to Hollywood, a lot of that scene moved there too. And Vex was kind of low key. Nobody couldn't pay attention to it anymore because we were off with whoever on tour. We met some really good people that helped us out. So we did this album. And when we were looking for an album, we didn't want to have anybody who would have an idea of what he thought a Chicano or a Mexican American was from what he saw on TV. I mean, they were telling us we're going to get your album and we're going to have velvet Elvis paintings on top of it.
Oh
I'm like,
God,
yeah,
no.
I'm not kidding.
Oh,
They
dear.
meant well, okay? These are big. I mean, these are Janet Jackson's people. Okay,
That's beyond
big
fucked
people.
up.
Yeah, well, just all kinds of stuff like that. And we said, yeah, we want somebody. We don't want an American, and that was important. No Americans. So then we were hearing from them. Well, we're looking at this guy. That guy's a Canadian. Blah 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 blah. And then little did we know, like I tell you, either one of them showed up one night or knew about it from the Clash, particularly Mick Jones, who was actually the behind scene leaders of the Clash. You know, Mick Jones, he didn't like his voice, so he was starting a band, the Clash, and he needed a front man, so he went to the 101ers and he stole Joe Strummer.
Oh, that's how that came together. Okay.
That's how, and that Joe Strummer was a great front man, and he wrote pretty
Excellent. Yeah.
good too. So they're talking, and they were a triumvirate of him, and there's a band called with a guy named Ian Hunter in it,
Yeah.
Mock the Hoople, all the young dudes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same connection there. And they're talking about a project they want to do for fun. And lo and behold, they ran into Ronson, who had done his Bob Dylan thing, et cetera, et cetera. And
Just
he
people
also
know you're
did,
talking about Mick Ronson.
yeah, Mick
Yeah.
Ronson, the guitarist, a wonderful person. We're doing a whiskey show, and he shows up, and we didn't know he was coming. And it's winter, and it's raining, and he shows up in a black trench coat with the collar turned up, and he's still the most beautiful guy to look at in the higher fucking universe. Like, wow. And it's apparently he goes, he tells us that Jones and the others said that he should come and meet us to do a production. And our record company went, okay, they'll take it. Because they had him do a band from Canada called Paolas, and they won 6 Juno Awards. That's like
Oh,
6 Grammys, buddy.
yeah.
That's big time. Those guys were also cool, but they used to hate everybody. I loved hanging with them, but they would cause shit. You want to hear people that we call them metiche. It's a word when you get between two people.
Mm,
So we were pals with Bauhaus and them, and they came one night to LA, and they were shitting. We were sitting at the table, and they were shitting and on Bauhaus between songs. So needless to say, we didn't do a tour with Bauhaus because that fucked it up.
right.
But anyway, so he became our producer, and he had no idea what it was. He knew nothing about Spanish. He knew nothing about Mexican Americanism. Although they played Japan, Europe, everywhere else when he did with the Spiders and with Bob Dylan, this was interesting to him. And the funny thing about it is, and Ian Hunter talks about this all the time on his television shows and his magazines, is Mick had everything in front of him. All that accolade, all those awards. And what does he do? He goes to East LA and finds a Mexican band, doesn't even know if they could speak English, and he signs up to do them. And then here's the quote: he did it because it was interesting, and he snapped his fingers like that. And that's what Mick wanted. The thing about Mick and Mick Jones, who would call in sometimes, was they were into doing like a school thing with us. Like LA in those days, in the late 70s, early 80s, didn't have a lot of Indian food. And in Europe, they had it, specifically in London, because of that whole history of
Right.
India and everything else. They didn't have Thai food. So he would take us out and introduce us to these kinds of foods. And we would talk literature and stuff like that. It was amazing. It was school for him, to the detriment of a lot of people. Like, oh, this is the board. It's a Trident board. We did this board. And he would tell us what songs he did. Then he would teach us. Then he would get rid of the crew except for the main engineer and say, okay, Jesus, you're going to run this part right now. Make sure you watch it. Call him to the top. Like, I'm not going to sit here. He goes, yeah, you could. There's your engineer. There's his assistant. And you're producing now. And he did. On the sax parts on one of our Pachuco songs, that was me, because he taught it. He had so much confidence in us.
That's
And
so
we would,
cool.
of course, to pay him back, we would drop him into we had a 58 Pontiac. We would take him with us and cruise East LA, stop at the seafood markets, and just hang out. It was the best time ever. Sorry that, time passes and you got to end. So, and that connection went well. You know who else was interested in talking to us? Sonic Temple. What's that band? Back in the 70s, they were called something else before.
Sonic Temple.
Yeah, kind of like a hard band. Firewoman, that guy. He was doing
Oh,
yeah, they were what's their name? Sonic Temple was the name of
the
their album.
cult.
The Cult. They were
Yeah.
called they were called something else before. And so they're bugging Ronson to listen to some of their stuff, because what they want to do is something new that hadn't been done before. They wanted to use percussion timbales that snap and stuff on their stuff, adding it to their hard rock, which I thought was marvelous. And they were actually close to it. But by that's in the late that's not 79, 80,
Oh.
81. They finally hit it in the 80s, and it was great. Those are some of the people that if you want to know that hung around. I mean, I could name drop to high heaven. I could talk about the Stones and all that stuff, but what did it really mean? It just meant that people cared about you. And we took it that way. And we weren't all gaga about it either. So that was cool about being in Los Illegals. And funny enough, they almost all pronounced it correctly. The English part, Los Illegals.
What is I love the mix of Spanglish because like it's like I think it's become more commonplace, but it's like back then I can imagine that must have been a real standout to people too.
On everybody. Mexico, whenever they pissed us off, we would do a conduct our interviews in Spanglish. Of course, that's why they threw rocks at us and firecrackers in our faces on stage. It's a long story, that one too. We got stoned in San Francisco. How's that? San Francisco doesn't stone anybody.
Where were you playing in San Francisco? Whether that
There was a couple of theaters called the Stones, Keystone, Berkeley, San Francisco, Palo
okay.
Alto, and it was a sort of biker metal crowd, and of course, we did a couple of Spanish things and Spanglish things. The rock was hard,
Yeah.
and somebody said something, and Mr. Stupid Big Mouth, me, I had a shot back, and then it became a thing, and pretty soon they were coming with lots of stuff at us. And I couldn't understand why there was so damn much stuff coming at us. And we refused to get off the stage. One of their crew came to us and said, "These are the Earth Shakers. You're opening for a band called Y and T. They're also on your label. And what the Earth Shakers do is they like to pull off the first two opening acts so they can get to Y and T quick and get a longer
Oh,
set."
oh, so their audience was called the Earth Shakers.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we never got off, and they let us have it. But then Tony, the sweetest, kindest guy, if you ever piss him off, pretty boy too, pulls out his knife, starts flipping, and says, "I'm gonna kill you." Because somebody in San Francisco gave us each a bottle of, that stuff, that hard rock shit that the metal guys drink, Jack Daniels.
Oh yeah.
I fucking hate Jack Daniels. Give me a glass of wine with tequila. So the big thing was that we refused to get off, and we started trying to throw stuff back. And it was a bad, bad, bad scene. Bad scene. And so when we finished, the big roadies that we had to get Tony, who was by now stone drunk, and he was never drinking a big drinker. They had to pick him up over their heads and carry him out to the front where the van was to take him to the hotel. And he's on his back looking at the ceiling, and he's got his knife out. And he's trying to stab people as they're pulling him across like that. I wish I had photos of that. Because he's really pissed. At that point, everybody got scared. They said, "Oh fuck, they're for real." Yeah, we're from East LA, god damn it. And it just ended that way, a little crazier like that. Those are just stories, or road stories. On the
Yeah.
other hand, the next time we came back, we had a major batch of crowds, and we got to play the festivals. And you know who was really good? The biggest promoter, Bill Graham.
Yeah.
What a wonderful guy. I heard he was an asshole. Hell no. Free food. He paid a scale. He booked us at, what was the name of that place? It wasn't the Fillmore. It was a great, elegant place with chandeliers and everything else. It was up on a square. There was a comedy club on the other side.
Huh.
Wonderful place, man.
Where that would be.
The motels, we played with the motels there. They were from LA. And then we played with a group from Texas called, they had a song called She Talks in Stereo, and they were really great band. They should have been much more famous. Gary Myrick and the Figures. Gary was great too. Gary was so cool that we went on the second time to Texas, and he's well known in Texas. He asked us to go on the tour with him. I wanted to say no, because Texas,
Yeah.
we're the last thing you want to see. We're tall. We don't fit your stereotype. We're college educated consumers. We're also ethnic, and our music's gonna rock. And you're not gonna like it because you don't like yourself. That's me. And we did pretty damn good, but it was under his banner, and that's how we did that. And we wound up going to Houston, and Houston was an amazing place. So these things were happening. Album sold, our single sold 15,000 as a calling card, and it has that beautiful cover that was done by Melanie Nissen and Willie Head-On. Willie put it up, and Melanie Nissen, she has Oscars for doing covers.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, oh, she's awesome. And then 15,000, and then the LP sold 65,000, which is okay to do.
Especially for a
And
new band. Well, I just want to mention to people like I love about the single is like first half is English and Spanish, the second half is all Spanish.
yeah,
It's very
yeah,
cool.
we had to. And our people were very, very good at A&M. Herb Alpert was wonderful, and the executive producer was a gentleman named David Anderley, who was a Doors guy since they were at Electra, way, way back. You find him in all their books and stuff like that. He was an aide de camp. They started the film industry, and they did one of these teenage things, with what's her name in it, Molly Ringwald kind of
Oh yeah.
stuff. And the new regime came in. New regime, I mean, they mean well, but they're nervous because they got to make sales. They got to prove themselves. And they came in and they're like, I don't know. What do you think? And we said, we don't want an American producer to go, no, you can't. We got to get. So we argued about producer and songs. And at this point, we wanted to use a lot more percussion, but we wanted to do it in a way where we're running feedback. Feedback is running, and all the percussion is running, and then we jump into the song and have a great chorus and it'd be out. They didn't want that. So the first thing we did, we found a guy named Wally Brill, who's a damn genius. He had done like from London, he did 999, and he was a technical person.
Mhm.
I could name drop the people that did Thomas Dolby, all
Okay.
that class of them. He was crazy enough to come out and do us too. And we had a great time, did a great album, and everybody came to help us. All the people we met at the Vex. You got the keyboardist for Boingo, the guitar players from Queens of the Stone Age. They're all coming out and they're sitting. The guy from the Queens of the Stone Age plays flamenco guitar like you couldn't believe. Oh my
Oh wow.
God, these guys are amazing. And so we had this camaraderie with everybody, and the songs that were submitted were personally rejected. And the quote was, "We don't want you to play bar mitzvah rock and roll music." It's okay. So, and we said, well, okay, we're going to go back in the studio. And we didn't want to do that. We started thinking we'll have to tour again. And it was a nightmare touring in a lot of ways. Mexico literally tried to kill us. And the bull ring of 8,000 angry people because of stuff you said earlier in the week in the press about their heroes, who were nothing but a bunch of US and UK copycats,
Mhm.
that didn't go well. We didn't want to go touring anymore. Plus, we didn't like the money of the debt. There was a band from San Francisco. They did White Punks on Dope. What was that
Oh,
band?
the tubes.
The Tubes. Oh, those guys were funny. They immediately. Oh, you're a baby band. Don't let them take you to lunch. Like what? No, because they charge everything to you.
Oh, you're kidding.
Tubes were crazy. They were crazy. They were told how to cheat things and do stuff like that. Speaking of people giving us assistance, some of the black bands, the horn bands and stuff like that, LTD would say, wherever you go, if you're going past Texas, don't get off. Send your roadies in there to go get the keys.
Hmm.
And that's what we did. The roadies would go in and get, all the keys to the hotel rooms. It really was like so stressful. But our role wasn't to break that whole thing, just to sort of introduce that this is existent in existence, that Americans, and we are Mexican and Americans, second, third generations down, are here. And this is what makes us great. And we're always that positive way until you piss us off. Then we try to shoot you. Anyway, to make a long story short, we decided let's just stall. And Wally Brill went back to London to finish off some stuff. He was scheduled to come back, and we got to the point where we didn't want to do it anymore.
And just to
So
be
we
clear, so
stalled.
you had all the music that you wanted to do, and then they came back to you and were like, "Yeah, but that's what we don't want you to do. We want you to do."
We had about
Okay.
4 tunes, and so we they didn't want us to do it. They wanted us to do it again, like the Motels. They made them do the whole album again. Who's going to pay for it, right? All I could think was white punks on dope every time I talk to these guys,
Yeah.
right? They're going to make me pay for it. So we figured, you know what? Let's stall and see what could come of it. It stalled, and then the new regime didn't know what was going on, and they called our attorney, and our attorney was the biggest Chicano attorney on earth. He had the Eagles, the Rolling Stones, all those people. He was massive. His name was Peter Lopez. Rest in peace. And He didn't realize that it was sitting on his desk for him to sign or for us to sign, and we didn't say anything about it, and we let it lapse. Then the regime said, "Hey, you let that stuff lapse." And these aren't their words. Well, that's it. You can't come back. I never heard such beautiful thoughts and words ever. So now it's like, what do you guys want to do? We're going to pick our shots, do gigs, go off on tour as we want. We're not going to eat bologna and live in a van. We're going to do it carefully, and we're going to start doing shows, bringing in people and doing shows at Vex and outside of Vex. And it pretty much worked. We did an album that was like that one that we worked on. I told you about.
Mm.
We had to go into Mexico, and so we took the 5 songs and finished them off. Put a cover on it, that some of Willie's artwork, and we had a box of them. They were all cassettes, and we distributed them for free. Boom, boom, boom.
Oh, cool.
Totally against the law. They hated it, but the kids loved it, and all of a sudden, we're being written up in Mexico in better ways. Now they're enjoying. I'm seeing kids with stuff like they make their own little bootlegs and stuff like that. T-shirts, it's wonderful. So both sides of the countries are starting to get a good feel, and we were starting to get a good feel of that. And then the worst thing happened on earth. The middle class kids from the South Bay and Orange County discovered punk rock, and it was. I mean, we used to get along. Black Flag with their first singer Keith Morris.
Yeah.
They were the shit. Loved them, but everything that came after that, just horrible stuff. It's like all these kids that just grew up from GI Joe into violence. They drove us
Mm.
crazy, and they ruined the Vex. We walked away from it and let a junior partner take care of it. He ran it to the ground. He just started making money off it. He got kicked out of there, and he got kicked out of 4 subsequent places, and somebody got shot in front of one. This was that whole thing. We didn't want anything to do with it, and
Yeah.
that was the end of the Vex, and that's why that story came out. It was heaven in the air until there wasn't, that kind of a thing. So the second LP was cool, and we did a couple of small things that we didn't really release. We would give them away to people and stuff like we shouldn't have, but they were cool. Then the next LP we did was with our dear, dear friends, Concrete Blonde, with Janet Napolitano and James Mankey, who could play like nobody's business. He was a brilliant, genius person, an effects man. They're another band that, how much fame do we really want? We don't want that much. Let's get some money. Let's do our stuff, get our art out and do it. But they were wonderful. So we did an album called Concrete Blonde y Los Illegals.
Oh,
And yeah, that was cool. You can find that and lots of things. They would let us do what we felt. We took Jimi Hendrix's Little Wing and redid it.
hey,
Put
you
a
sent that. That
ranchero
was
spin on it. What's that?
you sent that to me. That was really cool.
We put a ranchero spin on it and added lots of glorious psychedelic feedback as it opens up. Have these little bells on there, and then it runs so cool you can't help it. They were very, very great, and we sold quite a bit of those, quite a bit. I was surprised without a real hit, and we could just play any place we wanted to do if we wanted to together. The old House of Blues would have what was it, 1,900 people, something like that, in there when they opened it up. Sold out, so sold out you couldn't do anything.
Wow.
Uh, Offers to go and do South America and stuff like that, but then again, like us, I don't think they really wanted to do that. They weren't like the great. How much can we get and do? But their name is enshrined in everybody's lips as a great, great band, and they were very, very good. That was the last LP, and then we wound up on compilations. Compilations. You remember a band called Ruben and the Jets?
I don't think I know
That
that
was
name.
the big Cheech and Chong thing, right?
Ruben and the Jets.
Yeah, yeah. Ruben and the Jets. They were like a psychedelic doo-wop group with a punk ethos in it. They were wonderful. Ruben and the Jets. You hear it anyway. Ruben and the Jets. They got a label with Warner called Zanya, and they would do compilations and stuff of things that were generally interesting, smart, always smart. There's nothing. You're not going to get this LP or this CD and go, "Oh my God, Mexican this, Mexican that." It's not that, and it's not about, "Oh, the poor Mexicans, the white guys beat us up." They didn't. And that's going to take me to my next part because I don't know how much time we have. The 1940s. As you know, I'm writing a book.
Yeah.
It's gonna the world's longest, craziest, ignorant title ever. It's called. I know they're going to change it. Beyond La Bamba, Adventures in Sociology, Agitprop, which is agitation and propaganda, Pachuco Punk and Roll, and Mixed Race Ideology. from
I love it.
1920 to 2020.
Great title.
I have been studying this my state forever, and I am seeing so many things happen. Why I have an Italian, why he has a Scottish name, because we are a mixed race, and we love to say now that we are la raza cosmica, the cosmic race. Never mind that a lot of new people have come to work the fields here, and they haven't quite been embedded in California history or Californiese, if you will. They will, and we will. So I'm going to take you to the 1940s and try to put it straight. In the 1940s, in France, there was a group of guys and girls, youngsters, well, not like teenagers either. They were called the Zazus. The Zazus were radical, funny stuff. They were the forerunners to the politics of the 60s. They were the forerunners to the hippies. They were the forerunners to the beatniks, the forerunners to the punks, because they started that whole vibe, anti-establishment vibe. They were so crazy. Remember, the Nazis had taken over France.
Hmm.
They would make their own Star of Davids and put Zazu on it. And they used to wear long coats like the zoot suits, long coats and threads and crazy thick shoes and stuff like that. And the funny part is one of the great writers in my area, in my era, Octavio Paz, who's won a Nobel Prize, had been trying to make a connection that they ran into each other and could never find it. So somehow, at the same time, zoot suiters were developing when the Zazus were developing. And here's the cool thing about it. The zoot suiters, well, let's go to the Zazus. The Zazus got trashed, harassed, beaten up, and of course, written up in the papers like they were just gangs and terrible for the public. Same thing with the Zoot Suiters, except the difference here was that the Zoot Suiters were doing their thing in 1940s Los Angeles. Now, the thing about Los Angeles and Southern California in particular is that all these sailors from Norfolk, Virginia, and the Marines from there, from the deep South, under heavy segregation, came to California. California did not have deep, hardcore, heavy segregation. They were all walking downtown. You can eat at the counter of that restaurant, not a problem. Nobody's going to say anything. So they brought this mentality, and apparently they didn't like it. And also they brought some stereotypes with them that all the Latina women are like loose, little spitfires that you want to get. So there was this flirtatious thing going with them, and the tension just built over time. And then there was a fight. And somebody went back to the base, and all the sailors came out and they were looking for anybody that wore cool threads and beat the shit out of them if they could catch them. Then they organized back and forth fights. It just went on and on and on. In my book, I have copies of the letters from the military to the government about that. What happened is they took that and they melded that. This is PBS also did this. They melded something called the Sleepy Lagoon murder trial, which was at the same time, and they murdered somebody and put 18 people, some of them women, in jail for murder. They combined that into the Zoot Suit, and the Zoot Suiters got the worst name on earth. But I will say this, most non-minorities that are punks today will remember in LA the hassle you got from the cops, the hassle you got from the paper, and the snide remarks from everybody around you just for being who you are. Except it took it further. So that's that whole thing about the Deep South. The Zazus, on the other hand, they had the Nazis, but they were smart enough to hide underground and have little hangouts where they could practice, at least to hear their stuff. They rejected the Parisian clothing, Parisian styles. They loved American jump blues, and who doesn't? And a couple of them did get arrested, and there was a counter group, not a counter group, a co group with them on the other side of in the other side of outside of Paris, outside of actually France. They were caught and they were hung for that kind of a thing.
Huh.
Then that's what I wanted to bring up. So the Pachucos were not gangsters. They were labeled that. And it caused so much trouble. That caused so much grief for us. We would be down the street and go, "What are you guys, modern Pachucos?" Our own people. We would fight with them like that. And so there we go. It's a continual fight, but it's a continual celebration that every so often we bring people together.
Yeah, it's a really cool. I love the idea of what you're putting together, and it's kind of like I like how you're pulling together these two different spaces, but kind of capturing the zeitgeist of the moment, and finding those connections and drawing them together.
Some of our songs have a lot of it. In fact, we have a Pachuco song on the LP. It's called "Wake Up, John," which is the true story. God rest in peace, John. That's the sax part that Mick taught me to record because he said David Bowie was a terrible sax player. He's terrible, and I produced this. You could produce your leaders, guys, and that's what he did.
That's awesome. Um, you mentioned, I just want to touch on for a little bit. You mentioned Willie Heron's art a few times.
Yes.
And you said he's still actively doing that, right?
Oh, absolutely. He does. He's been at the Pompidou. He's been in New York. He's been in London. He's also part of Oscar, which was that they were all artists that did live art, underground art scenes and stuff like that. And he's very busy right now. There's a very famous. We use California history, and it pisses off. I hate to say that word. It angers the Mexicans, and also we have our own Chicano, what I call Chicanazis. They are so hardcore being Chicano, without thinking. You're being a Chicano, and you might as well stab half of yourself because you're half white. We're like the giant mixed breed of the world. There was California history. On our drum head, we put a picture of Joaquin Murrieta from Murrieta, California. He was like the first father of the Chicano, whatever history it would. He is the reason they wrote up. Constant Macaulay in 1921 did Zorro. The Curse of Capistrano was the book.
Hmm.
And if you ever see the old Zorro movie,
I
with
remember
beautiful
those,
movie,
yeah.
that was him. So we put him on our drum head because he was in the gold mines. His house was robbed. His wife was killed, and one of his kids, I believe, was also killed. So he rebelled and became like a bandit. And that's what he would do. He would go to the town, find out who was what, especially if it was a corrupt Mexican politician, because this was before 1848 when
Hmm.
it was still California. And he would either kill them, rob them, take the money to the church. It was too easy a book to write. And Tyrone Powers did a beautiful job in that movie, by the way. So we would use that kind of stuff. And our whole thing was to promote Californianism, where everybody lived together. Maybe not perfect, maybe not happy, but for the most point, learning to live together and involving themselves in everyday life.
But I love, like, one of the things you and I talked about when we talked to is kind of like the punk rock ethos and like
Yeah.
how that becomes part of your life, and you've done some really incredible work outside of
Oh,
music. And
yeah, I was lucky. Yeah. I was afraid to be out in the street or have to go back to the burrito circuit to make money, right? Burrito circuit in East LA where all the bands that play the cover bands and you did these songs over and over. And there were some brilliant, you don't know how many keyboardists and guitarists I wanted to pull out of their bands and start their own group. They didn't. I was afraid of that. So I kept going to school. And civil rights interest me a lot because of my family's mixed race. We have German, Japanese, Italian, Mexican, American. And I started working on those things, and I made friends with Willie, and he was the same way. Mixed race, a couple of generations down. He did that giant. The Center for Free Legal Society has a massive piece of art on top of their building at the top, and it's massive, of Joaquin Murrieta. That's how we got on that. People walk around, they drive by, they don't even know who that guy is. And that's another thing we have to teach people their own history and our own history. So I kept going to school, and then I was lucky enough to get an internship, and I lived in San Francisco for a couple of months to study, and then they sent me to the Indian reservations to live for a couple of weeks, which was a total experience for me. But what was the craziest was to go to post 60s Oakland in 79, 80. Wow, it looked like a bomb blasted the whole thing. It was
oh yeah.
amazing, 'cause California. And I was working and I was helping people deal with police departments and governments, and I became a federal investigator. I carried a badge, but I promised my dad I would never carry a gun. So I would take people. We had special agents that came out and did certain things. Mostly the easy way to do it was follow where the money goes, where the tax money comes down and it goes to certain congressmen, like in Central California, and they will build sidewalks on one side, but not the other side. And mostly what I'm finding out, it wasn't always on the minority side that didn't get it. It was on the side if you were poor.
Mm.
And that's where it fits in. Poor whites are getting a lot of shit from that right now. And I'm starting to see it happen. And as the middle class sinks, it's going to happen more and more and more. They've already got their hands, and I'm telling this to my non-minority friends, they've already got their hands in your Social Security. They already got their hands in your Medicare and your health. What's next? The taxes. They're going to start taking, the billionaires are starting to take everything down. And my happy little quote that I like to say all the time is, when it comes to billionaires, there's no white privilege.
Mm.
So we got to get together.
Yeah. No, I love like the story of like the work you've done has been you've really made a difference in people's lives, and to me that's what punk rock is about.
Yeah.
Is
So
like how do we make this like how do we transform things? How do we make things better? Whether it's the creativity of the music or the creativity of the work we do and making a difference for people.
yes, I totally agree. Totally agree that I did get pulled over by cops, even if I had my plates that were federal plates and stuff like that in Central California. And then I thought, oh my God, all again? I did this in Mexico and in Texas. That was pretty funny. I was coming to look at a county government that had some crazy spending on how they were buying property from the very poor and using it for gambling casinos and stuff like that. And that pissed a lot of people off. There were they were what they were doing was they were taking these essentially pickers that pick lettuce in the Coachella Valley
Hmm.
and then assigning them through their little your lawn needs to be cut or your trailer has to have this or the other, and they couldn't read, they didn't have anybody to advocate for them. So then the county used mistake federal money to destroy their little homes with bulldozers, and they just bulldozed the hell out of these people. You're talking about 7,000 people.
Wow.
They had nowhere to go and they had to go to work the next day, and you know them, they'll work no matter what. And they started a rent strike in some other places next to it, and that pissed whoever was involved. And they have a little bit of scary people behind them, maybe mafioso, maybe just crazy people. But two people wound up electrocuted
Oh wow.
because they were stealing the wires because they weren't giving them power, and they used that as the reason to destroy more. So myself and a team of others were sent down to investigate that. We did that. You know what? We won. Then we had to get some housing and stuff like that. That case was so bad I couldn't sleep at night for days, nights. Then cops would follow you around too, that kind of stuff. I was thinking all over again, they're gonna shoot me in the alley, but that didn't happen, did it?
And you made a real difference in those people's lives, so that was amazing.
It was just a job to do. It was just a job to do. But I did get, as I mentioned one time, a letter with a picture from this beautiful young girl saying, "Thank you for my home." She was out. They got enough money to buy a new trailer. Trailers are what, like $10,000 used? And she was so happy about that. We put some money into it, did some infrastructure for their place, so they now live there. And now they're picking and they're not bothering anybody. The idea is this: they wanted to use their land, which was abutting to an Indian reservation, give that to the Indians and use their okay to have gambling there. Then there was plans for a huge, massive hotel with a giant swimming pool. So you had gambling, hotel, and it was all going to be on this Indian land.
Mm.
In Riverside County, there's interesting. There's an immense amount of wealth. No matter what you see, oh, it's a cheap little 909 area code place. Hell no, they're so rich because I got my favorite accountants on there, which really pissed them off. Don't piss billionaires off. Now, today, they'll kill you. But in those days, we were able to get some stuff done. I used to, when they gave me the power to subpoena somebody, I almost fell flat. I go, man, how did I get here? Anyway, we won. That happened, and that didn't go through. But so you see how they try to take advantage of the people when it comes to billionaires?
Oh yeah.
You're not gonna stop them. They
We're
just did it somewhere else, and they didn't use any federal, not one federal dollar for anything. They used their own money. Yeah,
yeah.
I was lucky.
Well, I'm glad you've done the work you've done, and I'm glad that you guys keep doing music, which is really cool.
Yeah, we love to do stuff that's fun. We like to take a song and tear it apart, rip it up, and see what we could do with it. We'll put a show of artwork on, and people are so responsive. And we'll bring in some crazy poets. We brought this one Chilean poet whose family died when they took over Chile from Allende,
Mhm.
and that revolution. And his stuff was sing song beautiful. Next thing you know, we're having all these people from South America come. Then it turns out that our hero, the guy from Zorro, was originally from Chile. Now we have a South American connection. And it's just so interesting to see those kind of things. And we get to play at the cool places too. So we get, there's this chola, you know, the chola is the hair and she razor blades and she can play cello like nobody's business. She can read and she plays beautiful cello. So we start doing chola con cello, Los Ilegals, some poets and stuff like that. And we wind up doing stuff like the elite places. I know it's weird. The Getty Center more than once or twice and sell enough seats. It's really interesting to do that. And in the end, it's all about how mixed we are and how you have to think about who you are as a country. You can do the same thing we could do there. In World War II, there was some segregation, but my uncles, they were paratroopers. When they went out in the battle and they jumped into Normandy, there was three of them. One 82nd, two 101 Airbornes. Their friends were predominantly non-minority, and they didn't hang out together just because they were the minority that way. I know there was a Texas thing where they made the Chicanos all be the Texas contingent, but that's Texas because they're stupid. This is California. This is what we wanted to get together and do, and it's been working. We do it every so often. We're thinking of putting together another thing right now too. We haven't figured out what we could do. We're finding these young Koreans, second generation Koreans, that are rebelling. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. They go to college, right? They get their degrees and they play an instrument, violin, viola, cello. And they said, I like cooking. And their parents are all pissed off. No. So they run away from home. They get together and they start a restaurant. This is a good one over here. And play punk rock violin acoustic and dye all their hair silver and even take these beautiful cellos and they splatter them like Jackson Pollock.
I'd love to see that. Sounds awesome.
You'll have, if you see us, you'll see two cellos right here, a couple of violins, and one is a chola, right? And then us. And it usually comes out so great. And we get to change with songs and make people happy. They'll sell out when we do them.
But I think as we're talking, I think you're making a really important point. Just because I mean we are in really it's fucked up times right now, but it's like I think our diversity is our strength, and
Absolutely.
that's a
That's what made
power
it
that
work.
can't be defeated. I mean it's bigger than all the shit that they're trying to pull.
Right now, I'm posting because I think it's important for us, and we discussed this. We need to bring in the non-minorities into the movement against what's happening to the middle class in America. I'm not saying to the minorities, to the middle class. So I'm finding pictures of the Dust Bowl, pictures of poor whites walking, and the billboard says, "Turn back and go back to Oklahoma. We can barely take care of ourselves." Stuff like that. And then all squished out in a small apartment. And then I always love to put my little sign there. When it comes to billionaires, there's no white privilege. You're next.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's
We need because we need to be together. I remember the 60s. Don't forget how old I am. That I learned from people from a group called SDS, Students for Democratic Society,
Mhm.
and how they arranged demonstrations and people that I thought were wonderful. Like one of the biggest thrills for me was not meeting, so and so from the Rolling Stones or so and so from whatever, was meeting one of the guys from the MC5, Motor City 5
Oh
out of
yeah.
Detroit. They were at the Chicago 68 when it turned into a massive riot. They were on the stage. And I love those guys. And when I'm getting a trophy many years later here in LA for something, he's the guy that walks up and brings it to me. I almost fell on my knees and kissed his
Yes.
foot. Love the guy. I forgot his name right now. Love that guy and what they stood for.
Yeah.
They used to throw back for their backdrops. They would put an American flag. And in those days, you could not do an American. You could not cut an American flag or wear it or anything. It was against the law. Although they're doing it like now so poorly too, in such poor taste. But one of them was friends with a guy named Abby Hoffman. I love Abby Hoffman, my radical Chicago 7 Jew, right?
Yeah.
He made a shirt out of an American flag. And then there's pictures that I have seen once where he's daring the cops, go on, hit me, hit me. You're going to hit the flag. Yeah, that was 1968, So then I see these terribly out of shape, disgusting, fat, uneducated, terrible Americans that really need to go back to where they came from, and that's their mother's wombs, and they're destroying the flag. Look at I got hot pants made with my fat asses in these hot pants. Oh my God, it's the world's crazy. Yeah, you were a lot of fun. I'm sorry, and I
I
was
love
glad
it.
to take you through I was glad to take you through the war zone, but I wouldn't
Oh,
take you there. I wouldn't take
yeah.
you there for nothing, dude. They're everywhere, and they're pulling people out of their cars and stuff. They're unmarked. They have no ID, nothing. And they could pick you if you piss them off. They could take you at random and put you there. Now they're going to put us in America's first gulag in Florida, the alligator Alcatraz. I don't know if you heard about that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's
You don't know where you're at. You can't make a phone call. They'll shove you in the alligator Alcatraz when it's done. The big joke, and it's amongst ours, is that, well, fuck the alligator Alcatraz. We're Mexican. We'll just kill the alligators, make tacos out of them, and make boots out of them and sell them.
oh man, it's yeah, it's really heartbreaking what's going on. I just keep trying to remind myself that nothing is forever.
That's absolutely right. You know what? That's exactly what I was telling my daughter. It's not always going to be this much stress for me, huh? Don't worry. Everything gets better sooner or later. This
Yeah.
too shall pass.
It's just it's conservatism. It goes against nature because nature changes, and everything that they desire is the opposite. They want everything to be in a little box and everything to be controlled, and nature is like, no, that's not how it works.
I can't wait. I hope I live to that day.
But we will. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Oh, you're just a young whippersnapper. You're still shitting yellow. I learned that from a guy from the South who told his kid that, shut up, you're still shitting yeller. Oh, I got to steal that one.
Oh, that's funny. Um, well, hey, if people want to learn more about Los Illegals, if where would you suggest they go first? Because I know you guys have been written up everywhere. There's a ton of stuff
Yeah.
out on you, but
We've been written up, thank you, Lord, whether it's in verse or chapter or a paragraph in over 40 books.
yeah,
And they are art, sociology, music, and punk rock. And we've been blessed to have lots of good stuff. In fact, I keep looking for bad shit, and it doesn't happen very often. Because the bad shit is the fun stuff. You have to get mad about it. But we don't have a website. It's too egotistical to put a website. Here we are. Look at us in our glory. Here we are taking the train downtown. Here we are getting our shoes. But we do have Facebook pages. Mine is Jesse and then Chuco, Ciucco, which is short for Pachuco. Velo, Velo. That's Facebook. And you can also find us at Los Illegals page on Facebook.
cool.
You'll find a lot of fun stuff and pictures, and everybody could take what they want. We don't give a damn.
Yeah.
It only makes things better.
Well, I really appreciate everything I mean, I love the music you guys put out. I appreciate you're still doing it. And I love that you've taken what you've done. You made the choice to move away from the industry when you did, take
Yeah.
on the lives you wanted to live, and then make music as part of it the whole way through. And I really appreciate that.
Well, here's another good thing. So when you sign up, remember we were worried about the publishing money? They
Hmm.
give you advance money, record advance, and publishing. For those that don't know, publishing is when your song gets played on the radio or TV that's making money off their show, and they got to pay you a bit of it because they're making money off you. So we had advances on that. And in today's money, the record advance for the two LPs and the publishing would have been $800,000.
Wow.
And LA, in another song called Secret Society, paid it off last
That's
year.
amazing.
That's
Wow.
stunning. So, and we always kept touch with our publishing company. We had Universal, they're big, and they would just write back to us and tell us. So now we're making money, not very much. We get like maybe $1,000 a year each, but still, we paid that motherfucker off.
That's
And
huge.
that's one of the things that's bad for kids or young people or musicians when they get into that and they take advances from big companies. It just they carry you over to the next one, carry it over to the next one, and then they got you on your hands and knees and they're telling you play fluff and put Velvet Elvis paintings on your cover and all that stuff.
Still can't believe they did that. That's it.
They did more.
Oh man. Well, hey, this has been so much fun, and I wish we could just keep talking all day, and I'm sure we will again soon. So,
You know, you and Punk Globe and Ginger are part of that small, not saying that there isn't any, that small little nut that's inside a fruit that just is just the best thing on earth, and you know you're going to get more. I just love it. And I've always watched Punk Globe from the outside for years and years, never contacted them. The guys one day said, you know, let's just, we sit around and we decide who to send money to, a politician or an organization. And somebody brought up, what about Punk Globe? Like, yeah, we're not sending anybody the Punk Globe. They probably could use it because you know there's no paper anymore, so we donate to Punk Globe.
that's
We love Punk Globe. I hope our picture gets in it. You want a picture?
I
That
know
would be
Ginger
nice.
loves you guys, so
Oh, it's like when we did Rolling Stone. That was something else. You know, you wait to get on there, then you have a fight with the article guy, the guy that writes it, and you know you're going to be fucked up. It's really great. And they put a big ass half page picture just to go with the detrimental idea of what they were going to do to us. I'll send you a copy. It's called Los Illegals Ain't Smiling. Written by a wonderful man named John Mendelsohn. He's in London. His claim to fame, he's a great writer though. His claim to fame is being the guy that trashed the first Led Zeppelin albums
oh God.
and trashed the first Los Illegals album. So we're blessed, damn
You're
it.
in good
Please
company.
trash us again.
You're in good company.
It's a pleasure talking to you and
Oh, so good
everybody
talking
here.
to you too. That was great.